Choosing to be child-free usually is met with a lot of questions, concerns, entitlements, curiosities from other people. And this video is going to be about how I made that choice and how I have been able to stick to that choice and feel good about it. If you're into that kind of thing and that you think this might relate to you or be interesting to you, please stick around. First, I want to say there are so many ways to live a generative life without having children, live a creative life without having children. Sometimes we think of giving birth in just one way, and that's to another human being, but really you could give birth to so many things in your own life without it being a child that you have to take care of and who demands, understandably, all of your attention for a long time. Children are not the only way to experience fullness. It's just not true. If you don't know me, I'm Ashley. I'm a therapist. I've been married for 15 years and I'm 44 now, so I have thought about this for a very long time at this point. At least it feels that way to me. At this point in my life, I am firmly out of the stage where anyone asks me if I'm gonna have kids or why I don't have kids. I'm in perimenopause age now, and I think people are just giving it up at this point, thankfully. But this topic remains important to me now because as much as I think women and men more and more feel and understand that they have a choice about whether or not they have kids and that either way is a fine choice, there are still a lot of people who don't feel that freedom in making the choice, who feel the weight of others' expectations, who feel the weight of society's expectations, and feel confused internally about what they want to do and worried about what it will mean if they don't have kids. It's important to me that I share a message about do what you can only make this decision according to you and your life experience and what you know is good for yourself and what you know you want for yourself in your life. No one else can know that for you. Doesn't matter what they say, how well they think they know you, how well they think they know their life with kids. They may not have self-reflected on their life with kids at all. So just don't listen to anybody else and don't listen to other child-free people either. You have to listen to yourself as far as what makes sense for me. And just as a side note, the reason I'm also pretty motivated around this topic is because I grew up with a mother who did not want kids. She had 3 of them. She didn't want them. And we felt that all the time. We felt the brunt of that all the time. And I never want anyone else to experience that ever. My mother resented her life and we could tell and we felt it. She's an extreme case for reasons I won't get into, but any version of that where a child feels unwanted or feels all the time like they're an obligation or feels all the time like they're too much because their mother and father didn't think about, does this really work for me? Is this something I really want to give? Do I really understand what it takes to be a parent, and am I willing to give that? And just as a disclaimer, the point of this video is not to convince anyone of anything. The point is just to share my experience and what this is like for me, and maybe that will help people who are contemplating things one way or another. And in case anyone needs to feel supported in this area, I would like to provide that in some way. I never remember ever wanting kids. Never. There was not a point where in my childhood where I wanted to pretend I had kids. I was never into that kind of relationship. Never. And I always thought, maybe I'll want it one day. Maybe that's something that comes to you when you're older or, so it didn't bother me that I didn't want them. And I just was going to stick to that until anything else occurred to me. But I remember somewhere around 14 or 15 standing in my grandmother's kitchen and I was putting the dishes away or something. And they asked, I think somebody must have asked me about whether or not I wanted to have kids. And I said, no way, I am not having kids. And my reasons then were all I could see was how that was gonna get in the way of what I wanted to do with my life, which is not like I had some crazy different dreams than anybody else about my life. I just felt like children were really gonna get in the way of that for me, and I wouldn't be able to manage both taking care of a child and working toward whatever I needed to work toward. Plus I looked at it as totally being saddled down by something. I didn't look at it as this great experience. I just looked at it as like a horrible obligation that you can't get out of. And I think I felt that way about kids forever after that. Not forever. I felt that way about kids and didn't really think about it again until until I was 26. And by that time, I'd gone off to college. I'd moved to New York. I had been living in New York and working on my career in grad school and all of that kind of stuff. And I met my husband. And at that point, I was so smitten and taken with him, and still am, but I was so smitten and taken with him. I remember one of our first times together, we were walking around the city, and I could see I had this vision of me as a pregnant woman walking with him around the city in the same place. And that was the first time I'd ever had any kind of vision like that, where I could see something like that in my future. So that did confuse me for a while, but ultimately, after dissecting it for a long time, I realized that came up at a moment where I felt so loved and seen, and my world felt full of possibility. He and I, over time, would check back in every so often, like, how you feeling about it? How you feeling about no kids? How you feeling about no kids? And it just never was something we ended up wanting. So as I was in grad school more and more for therapy, counseling, psychology, all these things, you can't ignore the fact of how much a parent does impact a child and how much influence a parent has. And I absolutely respected that and want to take whole responsibility for that. And so as such, I knew I didn't have that in me to give, or I have a lot in me to give, but that's just not where I wanted to put it. I took care of my siblings growing up. Given what I said earlier about my mother, you can probably understand why. So I had had my fill of caring for other people and negating myself. I had to take care of my mom and negate myself for someone else in order to care for someone else. And so all I could see about motherhood was negating myself to take care of somebody else. And I just wasn't going to do that. I needed so much work, so much help, so much attention from myself in order to grow into a more whole being. If I wasn't there myself, I wasn't going to be able to give that to a child. I mean, my husband and I really enjoy each other, really enjoy our time together, really enjoy doing anything together. And it really it's often been a discussion of like, I don't want anything that interrupts that. Without kids, we can do whatever we want, spend our weekend however we want, travel whenever, however we want, spend as much stupid money on ourselves as we want, and go to Burning Man and lose our minds for a week if we want. We don't have to care about like having to take care of little people when we get back from losing our minds. And those might all sound like selfish reasons to anyone listening. And that's okay. You can think that those are selfish because they absolutely are. I think this decision, again, should be selfish. That said, choosing to be a parent is not selfless. When you choose to have kids, that is totally for you. That is 100% for you. You want a child for X, Y, and Z reason. Those reasons are for you, whether it's to please yourself, please your family, please your church, please society, whatever it is, that's for you. So, and that's fine too. That's your reason for doing it, and okay. For me, I wish people thought about that more, about what are their reasons for wanting a child, because sometimes those reasons for wanting a child is going to end up bad for the child. It's going to end up with you resenting them. It's going to end up with you being resentful that they're not the thing you thought they were going to be, and they're not reflecting you in the way that you thought they would. And there are so many wonderful parents, believe me, who wanted the job, loved the job, know that the job was hard, but they wouldn't change it for anything. And there are a lot of parents who chose it for whatever reason and did it for the wrong reasons and are suffering because of it, and the child is suffering. That's my spiel on that. You will never see me be caught slipping into thinking my choice is somehow less enlightened or more selfish. I think I have made a decision that's best for me and best for the unborn child who'd have to deal with me. We adopted 2 cats a couple years ago, and that is absolutely my max. I need no more. Because sometimes I feel all the mom guilt that moms feel about kids, but I feel it with cats. Like, am I playing with them enough? Am I doing this enough? They're acting this way because of me. And if I were different, they'd be different and they'd feel better. You know, I feel all of that with cats. So I can only imagine what I'd be like with children. And cats, that's my max. That's my max. Now, I'm sure there are questions about have I ever had regrets, and I'm gonna save that for another video. I did mention that like my mind has waffled here and there, but do I have any regrets? I'll talk about that in a future video, so stay tuned. That was cool. Parting advice for anyone making this decision: listen to yourself. Ask yourself all the questions in the world about why you want kids. Why did your mother want kids? What kind of a mother was your mother? What kind of mother do you want to be? What kind have you really gone through each stage of a child's life, an adolescent's life, and think about it being a 24/7 job. And is that what you want in your life? That's what I think. And either you're up for the job or you're not, and either way is totally fine. One thing I will always say is there is loss either way. You sacrifice something if you have kids, you sacrifice something if you don't, but still not enough to make me change my mind. No one can possibly know the intricacies of how you grew up and what you learned about parenting and how you were treated, and no one knows how you see your life and what it's going to take and know your inner resources as well as you do. So this has to be a completely personal decision. Please block out everything else anyone says. And I will say that's what I did. I have a remarkable capacity to be totally concerned about what people think, but when it comes down to it, I have these amazing blockers and I just block it all out and I move forward. And I can let go of what other people think when I'm confident in the decision. And I can only be confident in the decision if I know that I have really taken the time to think about it. And then you can't tell me nothing. You can't tell me nothing about my decision. You haven't thought about it in the way that I have. You never thought about it as deeply as I have. And I feel confident about that. So I want that for you. Totally would love to hear your experiences in the comments. Anything you'd like to share, I'd be happy to hear. And let me know what you'd like to cover next in this territory, if anything. And thank you for watching if you made it until now. And just remember, there are so many ways to live a generative life without having children. And I have a lot more to say on this topic, so videos will be forthcoming. But for now, goodbye.